So we were discussing medical emergencies on Shabbos. As the Gemara tells us in Yuma, Pikuach Nefesh is Docha Shabbos. As we know, only for the big three you have to give up your life, but for Shabbos you don't have to. Even though the Sitz Eliezer points out, that's why we need it. Even though in other areas a Machal Shabbos sometimes is compared to an old day Avodah Zarah, but not in the sense that we don't assume you give up your life, not to Machal Shabbos. So, and that's why we wanted 3 psukim to teach us so you don't make that mistake. And the Gemara gave different psukim. One was that we learned out the source by Mila, that if you could do a Mila on Shabbos, which is only one organ, so how much more so your whole life? That's assuming that the reason why you're doing Mila, it's a sakana anyway, so maybe a different type of sakana. But either way, that's what the Gemara says. The second one is V'sham Leis Hasa Shabbos with Dorosa, better than Machal Shabbos Achas Kedei Lishma Shabbos Harbe, and the other one, V'chai Behem V'lo Yamos Behem. And the poskim go on. We basically accept V'chai Behem. That's the one, and that's why there's a whole discussion in Tosfos, and there's a discussion in Navi with Eliyahu or with the Isha that the Almana's son was going to die. So Tosfos asks over there, how could Eliyahu go ahead on Mitami Lameis? He was a Kohen, and how could he violate? And it's a deraisa of. So Tosfos gives a difficult answer. Pikuach nefesh v'hu. Some want to say for the mother, but other Rishonim give different answers. So the question is, what's the issue? Like, why wouldn't everyone just say it's pikuach nefesh? Because that's a big chiddush of Tosfos. Pasha is not what's pikuach nefesh? Pikuach nefesh means you're alive, and I can keep you alive. I can save your life. But if you're dead already, and I did tchiyas hamesim, that's not pikuach nefesh, or it's not the usual understanding of pikuach nefesh. So according to different Rishonim, for pikuach nefesh, for tchiyas hamesim, you have a mitzvah of rofei cholim. So therefore, you won't be able to violate an isser in order to do tchiyas hamesim, and therefore you have to come on to it's pikuach nefesh. It's kind of like the Rambam in Yuma about one of the cures the Gemara is talking about. You have to eat a lobe of a liver. So the Rambam gets into a whole discussion about medicine derech segula. Derech's not the normative scientific method. So he explains they're against taking this lobe of liver or whatever it was to cure something, because it's not a normative scientific method, and you violate an issa deraisa. That's a whole discussion, the Ramban in terms of whether you could do a derech segula on Shabbos. Everyone agrees you could do a derech segula if it doesn't go against an isser. But if you're going to do a derech segula, in fact, I think maybe the Belzer Rav, one of the Chassidish Rebbeim, there was a shaila. What about, could I go to my Rebbe to pray for me on Shabbos, or someone's a chola? You go to, so you let a machal Shabbos for that. The right, the Rabbi, so Shlomo Kluger didn't think so, but that's a discussion, the same type of issue. Everyone agrees tefillah works, but it's not the normative method. It's like, could I go ahead and do something like the Gemara talks about, the Rishonim talk about, by David HaMelech. By David HaMelech, there's the Gemara in Sukkah that the water was coming above ground, and he asked, and the only way he could stop the water was by doing mechikas Hashem, by throwing the name of Hashem in the water, and would stop the water. So he asked anyone know what should I do? So his advice said, I know what to do. It's pikuach nefesh, and therefore you're allowed to. He said, if for one family you could do mechikas Hashem to save to Shalom ben Ish Ishto, how much more so for Klal Yisrael? So that's the Gemara. So the Kasha is like, wow, well, David HaMelech didn't know that. He could have asked me that shayla. Like, what's the chiddush? Everyone knows pikuach nefesh. So that's what the Mefarshim pointed out. The chiddush is that it is pikuach nefesh, because since it's not if there wouldn't have been a shayla, if let's say that the waters were over flooding, to go build a wall or to build something to save lives that you can even do on Shabbos. Because that's the normal way of stopping water. But to throw the Shem Hashem, so that's the whole Shaila. The issue is, all these questions and the more is, can I violate an Isser, D'Oraisa, D'Rabbanan, for something which isn't Derek Segula? Even though the end result will be that I'll be saved, the end result would, am I allowed to violate the D'Oraisa? In other words, could Eliyahu go ahead and Metame Lamesim for Tchias HaMesim? Right, so in David's case, he gave the answer, but so it depends on the case. So either way, so that's what they point out, that V'chai B'hem only applies to living people. That's why the Nesiv has a Shail also by a fetus. That, even though it's hard to tell, but if a fetus is going to die, but the Maimon will be okay, so that's what the Ramban writes based on V'chai, based on V'shamru, that if you keep the fetus alive, we'll be able to keep more mitzvahs. So that's what we discussed. So a Shaila that comes up during Shabbos emergencies is, let's say you have all things being equal, which they never are, but you have two doctors you use all the time. Let's say you're in a group plan, and both happen to be Jewish. One happens to be a Shomer Shabbos doctor, and one happens to be a non-Shomer Shabbos doctor. Is there an Indian to use one over the other? Is it us to use one? Or what's the issue here? So there's a famous Beis Halevi. The Beis Halevi in the beginning of Shmos. He fits into Pesach, the Parsha Shmos, the Exodus from Egypt. So on the pasuk Vayeda Elokim, he quotes a Medrash, and God knew. Very good. God knows everything. What do you mean God knew? So the Medrash says that the angels were saying, why are you punishing the Egyptians? Halalu ovdei avodah zara, v'halalu ovdei avodah zara. They're all worshipping idols. So why is it that you're only punishing the angel? Why are you only punishing the Egyptians and not the Jews? So he answered, because the Egyptians are doing it b'ratzon, while the Jews are only doing it b'ones. Only God knows. Only God could go into the grave of a person and knows why he's doing it. So that's why, and that's the pshat. God knew that the only reason the Jews are worshipping idols is because of the terrible suffering. But if they were under ordinary situation, they wouldn't. So it comes along the Beis Halevi and says a tremendous yisod, whether it's a chiddush or not, that's what we can see. But he writes, so what happens if someone is non-shomer, someone's non-shomer Shabbos, he doesn't keep Shabbos, and let's say he gets a Shabbos emergency. So the Beis Halevi says, we see from this Medrash and of other places, the definition of an onus is that I'm only desecrating Shabbos because of the emergency. If I would be desecrating Shabbos anyway, and the emergency is coincidental, I'm not labeled an onus, I'm labeled a machal Shabbos. So, in other words, so obviously the case wouldn't be, even the Beis Halevi would have to be moded. It's different even if someone isn't Shomer Shabbos, he's at home and he gets a call about an emergency, that's not Chil Shabbos. But let's say the similar case, you're driving to the golf course, and all of a sudden you get a beeper, and then instead of making a left to the golf course, you turn right. So maybe according to them, to the Beis Halevi, which you're not an honest, and therefore you have to call the Shomer Shabbos doctor because you're causing, it could be Lifnei Iver, you're causing the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor to Machal Shabbos. That's what also Rav Chanan Wasserman has the same yisod that he talks about. If someone is onus and ratzon bahadi adadi, let's say you're willing and you're duress at the same time. So in other words, let's say you go out with a business partner and he says, so where do you want to eat? They say, well, I'm kosher, I'm Jewish, very limited. If I go in, I'll get a cup. If I'll go into the restaurant, I'll get a cup of water or whatever else you might eat. So he's sitting there at the restaurant. Okay, he's saying, but no matter what, you can never have non-kosher meat. Well, actually, there is a time if my life's in danger. If someone puts a gun to my head and says, if I don't eat the treif meat, they'll kill me, then I'm allowed. So of course, it was in the States with no gun control or plenty of guns. It was a legal gun license. He says, great. He takes out a gun. He puts it. The guy said, I want you to order the biggest rib steak here and eat it. So obviously, what's the pshat? I mean, the point being is, let's say you go to McDonald's every day and you buy the lunch special. So you're on your way, you're walking down the block, you're all heading to McDonald's. Someone comes with a ski mask, puts a gun in and says, I know you're Jewish, and I know you can't eat, you have to eat kosher. I'm gonna order the lunch special for you, I'm gonna make you eat it. So according to the Rabbi and the Beis Halevi, you're not an honest. You would eat it anyway. The fact that a person coincidentally put a gun to your head, that doesn't mean anything. So in fact, that's a very high level. What I'm saying is, if we're judged by that, all our excuses are ripped up, because many times we always have an excuse. Well, I can't do that because of X. And what we're really saying is we don't want to do it. But so according to the Beis Halevi, get ripped. That's the Beis Halevi by Ani Yosef Oda Vichai, when he's talking to the brothers, and then at the end of the conversation, after they reveal themselves, so he says to Yehuda, "Is my father still alive?" So the Beis Halevi asks, "What are you talking about? You've been sleeping during the..." Every discussion was, "My Avi Chola, I have to go back. We're worried about our father." So what do you mean Yosef answers that your father's still alive? So the Beis Halevi quotes the Medrash, Gemara Chagiga, that from Abra Bazila, Aylanu Yom Hadin, Aylanu Yom Tochecha. What's Yom Hadin? Yom Hadin is like Judgment Day, but Tochecha is like you shrug yourself up. Like a person can't get up for minyan, but all of a sudden they're going on a ski trip at 6 o'clock, then they can get up. So, in other words, your actions are your own kategor. So that's what the Beis Halevi says. Yosef saying, "Oda Vichai." Of course, he knew my father. He was giving them rebuke. All of a sudden, now you tell me whatever it was when I was before this incident happened, and you sold me as a slave or whatever you did. You didn't seem to care much about your father. Now all of a sudden now he's rebuked. Even though my kasha is what about tshuva? Maybe then they didn't care, now they did. But either way, that's the yisod. So, and in fact, the alarm clock doesn't go off. Well, 11 o'clock. You're very happy you slept in. You wouldn't sleep in because you feel you should go to minyan, but you really want to sleep in. So the alarm clock doesn't go off. It's like ones and ratzon bahadi adadi. So either way, so that's the yisod of the Rabbi Chanan, the Beis Halevi, and in fact, that's the Haflah. It has the same yisod. The Haflah writes in Ksuvis, there's the Gemara that we don't. The Gemara says if you are married for 10 years and you can't have kids, so you have to get another wife because you need to fulfill the mitzvah puravu. We don't paskin that way today. So. However, the Gemara qualifies it, that's only if you're living in Eretz Yisrael. But if you're living in Chutz La'aretz, you can blame it on Avon Chutz La'aretz. And therefore you can't get a divorce, or you don't have to get another wife. So that's the Gemara. So it comes along Tosfos, it comes along that way, he says, and Tosfos writes in the end of Ksuvis, Bisman Hazeh, during his day, there's no longer a mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael because it's Hakanas Drachim, or it's too difficult to keep the mitzvahs of Tzvoi Yisvaretz. The Avnei Nezer, who lived probably about 100 years, he said it doesn't apply anymore. We don't have Hakanas Drachim, but either way, that's a discussion. But Tosfos writes him. So the Haflah writes, so if there's no mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael today, hence there's no sin to live in Chutz La'aretz. So therefore, the halacha, even if you live in Chutz La'aretz today, you shouldn't have to, get a new wife. So the Haflah answers, who are we kidding? It's true, Tosfos writes, Bizman Hazeh, there's no mitzvah. But we wouldn't go anyway. Haraya today, we wouldn't move to Eretz Yisrael anyway. So the fact that there's no mitzvah doesn't make a difference. We all know your onus and ratzah, but so therefore, even though, so you still could get, so you'd still avon chutz la'aretz, because even if there was a mitzvah, it's the same yisod. We see among the Roshi Yeshiva, they have the same yisod in Lamdas. And one more example, and we'll move on. There's Rinas Yitzchak. He's a sefer mostly on Navi, but he has something on Chumash also. I think it's Rinas Yitzchak. So he writes on the pasuk. We know that Yosef died. Was it 10 years early? The Medrash says. I think it was 10 years earlier. Yeah, I think he's supposed to live to a certain time. He died, like his father he died 10 years early, the Medrash says. So, why? So the Medrash says because when he was speaking to his brothers, when they said, Avdecha Yaakov, he didn't say anything. So the Shaila, the Rina Tzitzak asked, but, so Bishlam, he should lose 5 years. Because when they were saying it in the Hebrew, he couldn't tell them he knew what they were saying. Or else they know, he was, so therefore, but for the 5 times they said it, whatever, in Egyptian, whatever, then so why lose 10 years? So the answer is we see, because from the fact that he didn't rebuke them when he spoke it in Egyptian, so therefore, even when he went to rebuke them anyways, even though he couldn't have, it doesn't make the same idea that you wrote to them. So that's the Yisod of the Beis HaLevi. So according to the Beis HaLevi, it's clear you call the Shomer Shabbos doctor because the other person's a B'chalal Shabbos. The Tzitz Eliezer, Rabbi Eliezer Waldenberg, who used to be the rabbi in the Shari Tzedek, he writes that he quotes the Beis HaLevi. It's not clear if he's quoting the Beis HaLevi as a pliya, like, wow, that's a big chiddush to the Beis HaLevi, or like he's agreeing. But either he quotes the Beis HaLevi, but he actually agrees with the Beis HaLevi, but not because of the reason of the Beis HaLevi. He has a totally different reason, a much more pragmatic reason. What's his reason? He says, what's going to happen? We know many times, a Yiddish mama or father, your kid's sick, you think it's like a real emergency, and so you call the doctor. You call your doctor to come, whatever. At least back in the day when there were house calls, or you go. So you call the doctor, and let's say, or you call Hatzalah. At this parent day, let's say you call Hatzalah, and 10 Hatzalah members come. So that's not a problem. If your perception is that it's pikuach nefesh, so it doesn't make a difference what the reality is. Of course, you have to, within reason, you can't live in your own reality, or else you'll need a psychiatrist, but within norm. So if you call your doctor, he runs over, oh, don't worry about it, it's going around, it's just a virus. So now what? Everyone knows it's not a sakana anymore. So if it's a Shomer Shabbos doctor, he'll know exactly the do's and don'ts. Okay, I don't need a prescription now, or I could tell them what to do. I'm not going to turn on light or whatever I need to do. But a non-Shomer Shabbos doctor, he's going to end up Machal Shabbos after we find out it's a non-emergency. So that's why the Tzitz Eliezer is. It's called the Shomer Shabbos doctor because he's going to know what to do either during the emergency part or the non-emergency. He'll know what you can do. So that's what the Tzitz Eliezer says. So when I heard this kasha, must have been 30 years ago, I thought that you should call the non-Shomer Shabbos doctors before I knew the Beis HaLevi and the Tzitz Eliezer. Doesn't mean the fact I know them, I'm changing my opinion. I'm saying I thought the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor. Why? Why did I think that? And I found I was in good company. Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky, and others, maybe Rav Zalman Nechemia Goldberg. I mean, at least I think I'm a good. I don't know if they're happy that I think like that, but at least I'm happy I have them on my side. They all say the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor. Why? The my svara was, and that was that svara, is because let's assume Shabbos is 24, 25 hours. So what's the Shomer Shabbos doctor doing? He goes to shul Friday night, has a suda, maybe a little learning, sleep, davening, get up, chilling. So he's doing mitzvahs all day. What's the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor doing? I don't know. He's out by the beach doing the car wash or whatever people do. So at least if he's involved in a Shabbos emergency for 5 hours, so at least for 5 hours he's doing the mitzvah pikuach nefesh. He can get schar. So that's what Rav Moshe and Rav Yaakov say similar, and it's a similar issue. Rav Shlomo Zalman would say go with the Shomer Shabbos doctor. For the other, because this is a machlokes Rav Moshe and Rav Shlomo Zalman regarding, let's say you have a Shomer Shabbos and a non-Shomer Shabbos in medical school, and you get a call. So let's say the Shomer Shabbos got a Shabbos call, and the non-Shomer Shabbos got a Wednesday call. Is the Shomer Shabbos allowed to switch with the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor? Is it Lefnei Ivir? Like, what do you mean? He's not Jewish? I don't care. So Rav Moshe says yes, and Rav Shlomo Zalman says no. Rav Shlomo Zalman says he thinks it's Lefnei Ivir. And, Rav Moshe thinks it's not a problem that, based on different things that, like kind of like this. What I mean, it's because at least going to be involved, because what's he going to be doing if he's at home? He'll be doing worse stuff. At least, whether he's involved in emergency, at least medicinal stuff. So therefore, he's involved in a mitzvah. Similar shaila they have also by Shmira, by the Temple Mount. There are al pi halacha, if it's pikuach nefesh, you could go up there. But let's say when it's not. So again, there are different places where some say you could go, but the bottom line is same shaila. Can a shomer mitzvah switch with a nun? So again, according to Rav Moshe, that should follow yes. According to Rav Shlomo Zalman, no, it should be Lefnei Ivir. It's part of interesting on the issue of the Ivir, even though because Rav Moshe here doesn't see it's a problem, and Rav Shlomo Zalman does. It's interesting. It's a reversal in the case of inviting non-observant people to your house on Shabbos. So is it a problem? Or Rav Moshe was asked, can I tell people to come to shul on Shabbos knowing they're going to drive? So Rav Moshe has the truth. In the 1950s, someone from Detroit, he writes no, and he has strong words, or a maces, it's terrible. And Rav Sternbuch was asked a different child who was asked about, could someone invite their father? They were about tshuva, and Rav Sternbuch says, yeah, it's a mitzvah. Because what are you doing? You're minimizing the Aveira. What would he be doing? He'd be doing all this here. At least let him have a Shabbos meal. So Rav Sternbuch is the Meiko. It's usually reversed. Rav Sternbuch is Meiko. Rav Moshe is Machmir. Rav Shlomo Zalman is the middle approach where he says, we're concerned. We don't want you to look like you're condoning what he does. So invite him over before Shabbos. Try to do something that doesn't look. So that seems to be the normative approach if you can. But if not, Rav Sternbuch, he doesn't quote the Rekiva Eger, but the Rekiva Eger has a similar thing about cutting the payas, that it's better for a woman. Obviously, you shouldn't cut the payas at all, but it's better if a woman does it than a man, because a woman's perhaps not bechal the yisur, and therefore it's not. If you're minimizing aveiras, Lefnei Ivir is causing more aveiras. If you're minimizing the aveira, so then you're not. In fact, that's a famous piece that because Rav Yaakov on how could Yaakov marry the two sisters. There's a whole discussion if the others kept Kol Torah Kulo, and there's different shtickles on it. But Rabbi Yaakov, this is Pasha. I'll tell you why. Because the Avos Kodem on Torah, they just volunteered it. They were taking on their own chumras. But giving your word that you're going to do something, that's a real din. That's derech eretz. So therefore, Yaakov had to keep. He told them he was going to do it. I have a chumrah of not marrying two, so therefore I could violate a real issur of lying. So therefore, you have to weigh the mishkal hachasitis. Obviously, if the choice is going over a real aveira or something like that, so then there's a big difference. That's what the Rabbi used to always say when he was asked, what about joining? How could you join the Mizrahi, or how could the Mizrahi join the government? The government's like anti-Torah, or at least they're not observant. So he says, I agree the government's bad, but if I wouldn't join, it would be worse. By Mizrahi joining, so at least they'll do a little more. That was, and obviously a good that maybe felt differently. And then it must have been years later, I guess when a good that joined the government, so Rav Shach wrote out, I guess he wanted to preempt, because Rav Sternbuch, he was saying, how could you do it? Yarog Ve'al Yavor, all this. So he wrote a tshuva, and he sent it to all yeshivas in America. It was apparently, the way Rav Schechter says, it was sitting up in the YU base of Medrash. He sent it to Lakewood, and he wrote to explain why he joined the government. So basically, he said the same thing Rav Soloveitchik said, many years. He explained why it's not Lufnei Iver. He says, because here we're making things better and not worse. So therefore, if you're making something better and not worse, so that, he says, even though normally we have a principle, Shevei Atasa Adif. However, sometimes if the Kumba Ase is going to be only a D'Rabbanan, but the Shevei Atasa is the right, so sometimes we even though we do Kumba Ase. So that's what he was explaining, that like the right by the if I don't do like the famous Shiloh Rav Shlomo Zalman got. Rav Shlomo Zalman got that someone, like he had a big asifa and he had people over and he served food, and a lot of non-religious people gave donations. So the student said to Rav Shlomo Zalman, the Ramarais, you can't serve food to someone who will make a brach. How could you serve food here? So Rav Shlomo Zalman, he writes back is that let's go see. It's not Lufnei Iver, because if I serve them food and they don't make a bracha, so they're over at D'Rabbanan. But let's say I don't serve them food. So I think I'm the biggest idiot in the world. I see people came from America, they came and this religious rabbi doesn't have enough seichel to put out food for them. That's a chil Hashem. So therefore, sometimes even to do something with kum ba'aseh is better than shevi al taseh. So that's what Rav Shach wrote something like that. And a good. That's what Rav Yaakov over there. But that's the whole discussion by as well. It's about all these these shilohs about inviting non-observant people for Shabbos. So it comes out. So we have basically 3 shitas, 2 shitas, but 3 shitas. Is you only have 2 options. Do you call a Shomer Shabbos doctor or a non-Shomer Shabbos doctor? According to the Beis Halevi, it's a no-brainer. You don't have a choice. You are chayev to call a Shomer Shabbos doctor, because or else the other person is being machalo Shabbos and you're over apparently Lufnei Iver. The Sitzel apparently doesn't work with the Yisod of the Beis Halevi, or else he wouldn't have to come on to what he's saying. He says really they're probably equal. But because in the case of a non-emergency, then not to do things you're not allowed to do, so therefore you call the Shomer Shabbos. And Rav Yaakov, Rav Moshe, and others, they say you call the non-Shomer Shabbos doctor because you're actually doing him a favor, and that's the whole time. Then you get into the whole issue in inviting people over, not giving them food, inviting non-observant people on Shabbos, the issue with the temple. All these issues revolve around the definition of Lufnei Iver. Lufnei Iver is if you're improving the situation and not making it worse. So then there are many poskim who say that's no longer Lufnei Iver, and hence that's why that's Rav Soloveitchik's line with Mizrahi. That's Rav Shach by Aguda. That's Rav Shlomo Zalman by inviting people over, and why he's able to serve food to people who aren't going to make a bracha.